So let's talk about the second amazing movie that came out last year, also starring Amy Adams, called Nocturnal Animals. And this one, out of the two Amy Adams films that came out last year, I'd say Arrival I like more, but that's just because like her character is more prevalent in that one, and in this one it's more Jake Gyllenhaal's character. But I think that she did a fantastic job in this movie as well. It wasn't the purpose of the movie to have her in the movie as much, because this really does focus more on the story that's within the movie that is in the book that she reads. So it's not supposed to particularly have her as prevalent, even though she is. She just doesn't have as much screen time, if you get what I mean. But Nocturnal Animals, I think, is a really interesting movie, and I think that it's not what I expected going into it. I didn't see. I guess Tom Ford has made another movie I have not seen, and I think this is only his second film. But for a second film, this film is really well done, and I'm so glad that this got some Oscar nods whenever the Oscars happened. And I don't think they won any, but I think that this was a very noble effort, because this movie is really bizarre and different, but not in a way where it ruins it. It kind of reminds me of something like Mulholland Drive, except for this has more of a real cohesive story that's not symbolism for a lot of things. Like Mulholland Drive was, where that didn't have like a cohesive narrative. It was just kind of a weird, out there kind of movie that was amazing, but it didn't have a cohesive plot that really made logical sense. But this one does, but it has elements of Mulholland Drive or David Lynch's stuff where like it is out there. It's very odd, but the way that they interpret it is like that, where you've got jump scares like in those kind of movies that David Lynch does. For example, the scene where Susan is looking at the one character's phone and sees a baby, and then Aaron Taylor Johnson's character jumps out at her on the screen, and she drops the phone. But that jump scare was so well timed, and that reminded me of something like in Lost Highway, where Bill Pullman is talking to Patricia Arquette in bed, and she turns her head and looks up, and it's a man's face on her body, and it reminded me of that kind of jump scare, and how David Lynch does that kind of tension where it's an out there thing that you didn't expect. And this had a lot of David Lynch kind of moments where you have the opening credits, which is bizarre. It is a very bizarre opening credits, because it is weird, but strangely enough, I don't know how to explain it, but I felt like it worked for the film. I felt that it worked as a weird ass opening to give you really a taste of this weird movie. It's such a strange opening, because you have the opening credits, and then you have these really gigantic women, naked, dancing around for no reason. But it's a weird scene. Like, it is so out there and so strange. But I don't know. I feel like it kind of works for the tone that this movie sets out to be. It sets out to be such a weird, out there kind of thing, in a lot of instances. But I think it's more subtle than some of David Lynch's stuff, even though his stuff is amazing. But I feel like this is trying to make more logical sense sometimes. But I don't know. I thought that the way they interpret this movie was really interesting, just showing how you get that weird ass credits at the beginning, where why do you have that? But then it zooms out, and it does show all these big naked women dancing around. But then you see that it's Amy Adams' character Susan, who is like an art dealer, or she's part of this art museum, and like she is a rich fancy woman who lives this rich life, and she has since divorced Jake Gyllenhaal's character Edward, and one day in the mail she gets a manuscript for a book that he's writing, and the film mostly focuses on the book called Nocturnal Animals, which fits for the movie, but she gets this book and she starts reading it, while you get a couple instances of her in the real world, but you get most of it through the story, or through the book in the movie. But I think that how they did it was very well done, because you get it to where you see most of this story and you see instances of Susan in the real world, and she kind of doesn't like go crazy or anything, but she kind of has hallucinations because she gets obsessed with this book, because they did divorce and she wants to see him again. And by the end, whenever she like tries to email him and bring him to see her, he doesn't at the end, which is the very end. And I thought that the book and how this character was like, it was kind of like a weird fantasy thing where like, well, there's not fantasy elements in the story in the movie, but it feels like he's trying to interpret something this way about their relationship and what happened to them. And I thought that it was really interesting the way that they went about it and tried to do that with this character in the real world, while watching, for the most of the film, watching a in story thing of the movie where you see Jake Gyllenhaal playing another character named Tony, and he has to he has all these horrible things happen to him in the story, where he's got a wife and a kid, and his wife and kid are literally raped and murdered by Aaron Taylor Johnson's character named Ray Marcus, who, wow, Aaron Taylor Johnson is a chameleon. I think that there are so many times in some movies where I'm like, is that him? He's very good at looking different, I think. And I think that in this one, he is such a weird-ass character that I knew it was him going in. I already knew because it said his name in the credits. But the way that he acts in this movie, he almost is so unrecognizable. He's got long hair, got weird weird hair parts on his face. Like he doesn't have a beard, but he's got like just part of his sides and like a mustache, and he looks creepy and really gross and disgusting. But the acting in this, I'd say, is it's top notch. I think that the characters all are so amazing, and how, like, you've got Amy Adams' character, who Amy Adams does a great job, but her character, like I said, isn't the focus of, in the complete focus, because it focuses on her but reading the story. So she doesn't have as much screen time, but she is just as prevalent. But she did a good job, but like you don't get the full emotion except for in the story. Like you feel for her, and you understand what she's going through and what he's going through, but then you find that in the story it feels more like there's more emotion to it. And I feel like that's symbolizing that the character Edward felt that way for Susan, but he's kind of portraying it through a book, through emotions of this story. And I think that it was a nice way of doing it, of elaborating on how a person feels through storytelling in a movie. It's so weird to talk about it because it's hard to make it sound normal, because it isn't. It's not a normal movie, and that's what I really appreciated about it. It really was ambitious, and it tried to be something different than what I've seen before. And like I said, the acting is top notch. Amy Adams is great. Aaron Taylor Johnson is creepy and bizarre, and he is a piece of shit in this movie. He's horrible. He is such a good actor in this movie, and I just almost did not even though I knew it was him, he was still somewhat unrecognizable, to the point where it was just so hard to tell it was him, as he looks so different than he has before, and he looks so creepy and bizarre. And then Jake Gyllenhaal, who I really do like. I think he's in a lot of good movies that I love. And this is one of his best performances, I think. I think this is one of his best emotional performances, because you see this character in the story that she reads, where this guy has to stop on the road because there's this great horrific scene where, like, Aaron Taylor Johnson's character Ray and his friends are stopping Tony and his wife and daughter on the road with their car. He stops them. They take away the mom and the daughter. They kill them. And you have the Tony character in the book who is literally has to has to find his daughter and wife naked and killed and raped, and he has to go along with a character named Bobby Andis, who Michael Shannon plays, who's great, and they're figuring out who did it, and they get him by the end. But I just thought that, wow, that was really well done, and how Jake Gyllenhaal, like, I felt the world for this character in this book, in the movie. Um, but I felt for how this character felt, and it was horrible and horrific because they really go into detail about the rape and the murder, and it's gross and it's disgusting, but it really works just in how disturbing it is and how emotional it is and how he portrays that character. And it was really just disgusting, but in a good way. And I thought that really made it powerful, just how disgusting it was. It was really gross. Just how you had to deal with Ray Marcus and deal with how he pushed or pushed the character Tony in the book so far, because he literally raped and killed his daughter and wife. And by the end, whenever he got him, I was so thankful. But by the end, even in the end of the book story, Tony gets literally stabbed right through the eye and dies and gets shot through the stomach, and he dies in that way. And symbolically, I think it was saying that the character Edward died as uh, died instead of wanting to be with Susan. Like, he was trying to symbolize that and trying to say, like, he didn't want to be with her, and like, she tried to call him a year or two ago, and then she suddenly got this book. But I think he wrote the book just to say that I don't want to be with you ever. I don't like you anymore for what you did, because she aborted their baby. And I really liked how they have only a couple scenes. They're short, but they work really well. Where it's got the scenes where it's younger Susan and Edward, and they both are arguing about situations, and you could feel for you could feel for more for Edward, I think. But I think that it was just really well done showing these two characters, and you see, because even though it like has three different parts of the film where it's in the book or it's present or past, they all look different, because in the story it's not in a glossy big like area, like places where rich people are, where Susan is always at, because has a rich fancy life. And then you've got in the book where it's not that, it's out kind of out in the country, out in the wild, in that. And then the past parts, they both look different and they look younger, and I think that they did a good job showing how three of these different parts of the movie are separate, and they didn't get confusing. They really worked well, just how they looked. All of them looked different, and they all worked well. And I think that just the movie worked in just a bizarre way. It's a weird movie. It's really cool though, because I haven't seen every movie in the world, but I feel like if there is a movie that's been done where it's almost all from the point of view of a character in a book, but it's got something out, like a character out there, like a real life character reading the story. Well, actually, yeah. The more I think about it, yeah, there's like Princess Bride and stuff where like it's person reading a book and the whole story is the basics of the movie. Like this, where like the book part is the majority of the movie. But I felt like this was done well, in which you just see how a lot of symbolism is used in how this character Edward feels, and how in the end he doesn't want Susan anymore. And I like the ending where she goes, because he emails her back. She emails him in the movie and says that she wants to see him again. And by the end, she goes to a restaurant, sits there for hours and hours. She transitions to people leaving every couple transitions, and or every couple shots, and then she makes a sad look and it ends. But I just thought that it was cool elaborating on that through a story. And I think that it's not actually him, even though Jake Gyllenhaal plays both the characters. But I thought it was so cool just showing from a story view symbolically how this character feels and how you see how Susan is really invested in the story because she misses him and it's a good story. And then by the end, she didn't get what she wants. And I thought that was really cool. I thought that just it worked well as a as this kind of movie that sure has been done before, like from the point of view of like the book part of is a majority of the movie, like Princess Bride, or like and like there's a character reading the book, but like this is cool how emotional and how bizarre it sets this story up and how it sets this story in the movie from the book, and then just having Susan play off of that and showing her kind of obsession as it goes along, and then wanting to see him at the end, but he denies her at the end still. So I thought that that was great. I thought that it didn't end happily, which I feel like it wouldn't have, because this was already so creepy and bizarre. I don't think it would have worked that way anyways. I really don't think that it would have gone that direction, and I'm so glad it didn't. I'm so glad that this tried to be an ambitious movie and try to be something, I guess, that could have been done before. But I think that this just had a lot of new stuff in it where I just really liked how you symbolize, like I said, the character from the book to the real character, to the woman who's reading it and understanding what this means and getting more obsessed over it. I just thought it was well done, and the story was great. The acting was fantastic. Like I said, Jake Gyllenhaal plays some really great emotional moments. And how Amy Adams is as Susan, she does great too. And like I said, she's not in the movie as much, but she's still prevalent and just as important. But she's not. It's more about the story in the book than actually her. But she is still prevalent a lot. And then, like I said, Michael Shannon is really great. He's funny, but he doesn't change the tone. It's just this guy who doesn't give a shit anymore because he's basically dying, and he wants to just kill these fuckers who killed the character Tony's wife and kid. So it's just like, it was cool seeing Michael Shannon be funny, but it didn't like change the tone of it. It worked well on how this character just acted towards these horrible people, because these people are horrible that he had to deal with, and how Tony had to deal with them too. but Aaron Taylor Johnson, like I said, unrecognizable almost completely. I noticed him, like you can tell a little bit in his face that it's him, but he looks so different in how gross and disgusting he acts and how he looks. I feel like this is one of his most interesting roles because of how he looks and how he acts and how crazy and bizarre this guy is and how disgusting of a human being he is, and it works really well. It really is just an interesting movie. It really goes along this cool path of seeing two intersecting stories, but they don't feel like they're separate movies. It feels like it works both on the same level, and it keeps harkening back to her, so you see that the story keeps elaborating on both sides, but it is from the story view and from her view in the real life. So I think that was just very well done. It was a very well done movie. But let me know what you guys think about it. I really did love it. I thought it was great. I think it is one of the best films of last year. I think it was such a cool, obscure movie. It really is a different movie. It does a lot of things different, and it's bizarre and disturbing, and it works on such a weird level that I really did love it a lot. But anyways, tell me what you guys think down below. But thanks for watching so much, and I'll talk to you guys later.